So yesterday was my first workshop here in the Inner Arts Collective, and it was a smaller group. We had about 6 people, and what that allows is instead of me just teaching and talking all day, we did a bit more of a hot seat format, so each person got 45 minutes of the group's attention, which I think is a thing to consider in and of itself. Sometimes you're going to have groups that are larger, sometimes you're going to have groups that are smaller. When it's larger, it's just going to be a different kind of workshop. When it's smaller, you can do more interactive stuff, and you probably should. It's going to be more useful for people, more memorable, more personalized to them, which is something if the group's much bigger, you just can't do. But I wanted to share some of the stories that had come from yesterday's workshop. And the first one I want to share was about there's a woman who, the format was I had everyone think about a question that they had. And they had 2 minutes to share the question, then the group had 15 minutes to, or 10 minutes I think it was, to ask questions just to clarify with no advice allowed. And then there was 15 minutes for questions, 10 minutes for thoughts, and then I had 20 minutes to just talk and share about that. And since there's 8 people today, I think we'll do a version of that, a little bit modified. But her question was, she said, some of my clients are men who are, let's say 25 to 40, and then you've got women who are 18 or 17 to 25. And she said, I can't find the through line between them. And this is a classic thing where people define their target market just by demographics. And they think, oh, well, these two demographics seem irreconcilable. There's not a lot of overlap. What's the common thread? And that comes from this understanding of niche as just who. That niche equals target market. And my understanding, niche is not just target market. Furthermore, it comes from the understanding that when we talk about target market and who, the target market equals demographics. But target market is not just demographics. It's more than that. Demographics. Let's see if I can actually find the notes from yesterday. Yeah, there it is. I've talked about this in other places. You might have seen it. But it's like the outer ring of the bullseye of your target market, of who you're trying to reach, are the demographics. Then inside that, there are the psychographics. And the psychographics are going to be like the inner realities. The demographics are the outer realities. So demographic, they buy chocolate once a week, but the psychographic, chocolate lover. Just because they buy chocolate doesn't mean that they love it. They might be buying it for somebody else. So demographics are things we can see from the outside. They're, gender, ethnic background, languages spoken, profession. These are externally verifiable, but the psychographics are not. But then on the inside, we've got the journey, which is this journey from island A to island B. Island A where they've got some symptoms that they don't like, some problem, and island B where they have some results that they crave. That journey, so for some people what's more real is a problem, for some people what's more real is what they're craving. That's at the heart of it. But also, keep our eye on this actually. I said, so, that's the first challenge, is that you're looking at niche as just who. And so you're thinking, oh, that's how I need to differentiate myself. But as we talked more, it turned out she was focusing on anxiety and depression. That was her major thing. And she was doing that through a combination of psychotherapy and a little bit of art therapy. So that's already a little more particular, If it was just like, well, I just work with this demographic, but we don't know anything about what the problem you solve is and what you do. But knowing that, it's like that's already a bit of a niche, because there are a lot of ways to work with depression and anxiety that are not psychotherapy or art therapy. I said, but it's more than that. It's when we look at niche, it's not just who, as in who's on island A. It's also, what's the boat? So in this case, the boat that could take somebody from island A to B is psychotherapy and a bit of art therapy, but it's also you as the captain of the boat, who you are. That makes a difference, in terms of the niche. And it's also then your point of view, your perspective, your vibe on how do you make that journey in the first place. And that led us to this conversation about marketing being not about seduction and trying to get people to say yes and convincing people, but that marketing is really fundamentally it's not a convincing process, it's a filtering process. And so I said, when you do your homepage, the homepage on your website is not about you, it's about them. So they've got to be able to read the homepage and say, oh my God, that's me. And I said, it's like, and I said, well, what is this really about for you? What is anxiety and depression about? She She said, well, I just think that a lot of the people that I love to work with, for them, there's just these bigger questions about life. These bigger, more almost cosmological questions. Why are we here? What is it about? And I said, yeah. So, on your homepage, you could say something like, if you're like me, you might have these moments where you wake up at 2 a.m. in the morning and you go make yourself a cup of tea and you sit on the balcony and you look out at the city and you look up at the stars and you just wonder, what is this all about? Why are we here? And as I said that, she burst into tears in the workshop. She started to cry. And I was like, that's it. That's what you write. You write something that people feel so seen by that they cry. Not always, not for everything, but that where they read it and they say, oh my God, that's me. Not so what. That's the big test in marketing. That's me versus so what. And so when people think about niche, they just tend to get overly focused on these demographics and they miss the big question of marketing is about fit. Who is this a fit for? Who is it not a fit for? And there's other things. Carrie Klassen from PinkElephantCommunications.com has written the best ebook I've ever seen on how to write a homepage. And on hers, she writes these beautiful things of describing the qualities her ideal client might have. So it's like, could you narrow in even further than anxiety and depression? Maybe. But, again, the niche is not just who. The niche is also what you do, but it's also how you do it. It's not just the journey. It's not just, the person on Island A. It's not just the boat. It's also the route that you take when you're making that journey. And so I say, you probably have a particular perspective on anxiety and depression, and I'm curious what it is. And her sense was, she said, well, depression is kind of like this, or at least the image I got from what she said is it's like the ocean and the anxiety is the waves on top of it. But there's something already there, and when we don't look at it, it kind of builds up, and then we see the symptoms of anxiety, but there's actually something much deeper. And so that can be part of your niche, is that you have a particular take on this issue. So I encouraged her to keep refining that. I encouraged her to work on her homepage to really clarify who it is who's a good fit for her. Yeah. And I was like, and that's good enough. It's a good start. It's 70% there. When we're looking at niche, it doesn't have to be 100% there to get started, just 70%. So all that to say, if you're stuck around this whole idea of niche and all you're focused on is the demographics, I invite you to see a little broader, to see something a little bigger, a bigger picture. I hope this has been useful for you.